All right, let's bring in Darren Dreger, the Edmonton Oilers, with a 2-1 series lead. Probably, as McDavid said yesterday, we've got some things to clean up defensively. Stuart Skinner is great. A number of the big guys really got rolling offensively. Dregs, there's a lot to like coming out of that victory last night for the Edmonton Oilers. Would you describe them as being pretty much in the driver's seat of this series right now, or is that going too far?
Maybe a tad too far, just given what we know of the Dallas Stars. And, I'm one of those in the camp that you can't look at the score sheet and ultimately say that the game was as lopsided as the score indicates, because it wasn't. If you dig beneath the numbers, you see that Dallas outshot Edmonton 21-7 in the second period.
Huge period, yeah.
Yeah, so there are takeaways. The Oilers felt like they weren't as in sync defensively or as in tune as they have been and they need to be. So that's good. But, you look at the guys who did deliver, and for me, it starts with Stu Skinner, and not just with Connor McDavid and Zack Heyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in that line. Skinner looked as composed and dialed in as maybe we've seen him to this point of the postseason, right? Just a willingness to battle. And, there were times where, sure, Dallas had all kind of pressure. And, there were loose pucks and maybe he was fortunate occasionally, but there was a fight in that crease. Like he was, anytime there was chaos there, he seemed to just kind of rise from the ashes of it all. So let's see how that translates into game 4. Dallas is on the ropes, pretty obvious, and they have to feel like the breaks aren't going their way, no pun intended, but maybe it starts with the nurse slash on Roope Hintz, takes their top center out of the equation for game 3. I suspect that he'll be good for game 4, but we don't know that. There was the missed call on Brett Kulak, which led to, the quick strike offense of the Oilers. So there were lots of things I think Dallas takes away, says, we played a good game. The score doesn't indicate that, but it was a lot closer than that score. So let's focus on the positive.
It's funny because in a series, and not just this series, but pretty much every series in NHL history, there's one or two moments that are backbreakers for a team that eventually loses. And you mentioned the second period, and the Dallas Stars are pushing. They got one past Stuart Skinner. But how much does it kill them going into the dressing room after 2 that Connor McDavid goes, buries one super late, and now after playing maybe your best period of the series, from a control standpoint, you go in and you're down by a pair going into the third. That one must have just killed them.
Yeah, Pete DeBoer talked about that post game, right? They felt like they did so many good things in that middle frame and weren't rewarded for it. Jason Robertson gets credit for a goal finally, so it looks like he's sort of inching back. But then Connor scores with 19 seconds left in the period, and that gave the Oilers the cushion that they needed to then execute and play the game that they needed in the third period. And, I sound like a bit of a broken record in this postseason talking about those lopsided scores, but really that's what happened in the third period, right? Like Dallas had no choice. They had to open it up a little bit. They had to chase. And then the talent of the Edmonton Oilers just takes over and executes in the fashion that it does and did last night. So you do play the what if game. And what if it's a 1-goal game going into that third period? Maybe the outcome is different, but that's not the way it is. So you do have to give credit to the fact that, the big guns for the Oilers found a way to break that open, and it started with an incredible performance with Connor McDavid, and that's what he does, right? He scores those big timely goals, or he makes those timely plays that lead to game-breaking goals. So, what's the response coming from the Dallas Stars? I don't know, but what I do know is, it looked like Mikko Rantanen was a runaway for the Conn Smythe. It started in Game 7 against Colorado Avalanche, continued into the series against the Winnipeg Jets. And now all of a sudden, they're looking for offense from Mikko Rantanen. And Wyatt Johnson had a couple of blips in Game 3, but he wasn't able to deliver. And really, on and on it goes for the Dallas Stars. So maybe the hockey gods maybe they shine down, smile down on the Dallas Stars. I don't think this is a 5-game series. I have more respect for Dallas than that. But you, Dusty, you talked about moments, and Edmonton had a few of those, and have had a few of those in this series. So, did Dallas use all of their moments in the first game? Maybe, because, you look back at that game now, guys, it could be a 3-0 series lead for the Edmonton Oilers, and probably should be, considering how they started and played the first 40 minutes of game one.
Well, it was we came in after the game one. It was the most celebratory 6-3 loss I think we've ever had.
I just felt really good
program.
Even after the loss.
Yeah,
game one.
you had to be.
Really
but I wonder your thoughts. We had a texter as well chime in earlier, and I missed their name here. But I guess the one negative to take away yesterday was Connor Brown, the hit laid on him from Alex Petrovic. Your thoughts on that, if any?
Well, I didn't like it. We always get caught on the principal point of contact. And if it's the head, automatically you think, okay, well, George Parros from the Department of Player Safety is going to have to weigh in. Well, they put it through their process. Indications after the game, not suspendable, but I mean, I think you do have to consider all the criteria, right? One of them is when you have primary head contact, like we saw, Petrovic on Connor Brown, no doubt that the primary point of contact was a head. Is it unavoidable? And that's where you get into the debate inside that world of Department of Player Safety. If they believe it was unavoidable, then yeah, I mean, the play on the ice stands, and it's too bad for the Edmonton Oilers that it looks like they're going to have to move forward here without Connor Brown. You're guessing at injuries. I don't know. Do we need to guess on that one? I mean,
it looked like a concussion. Yeah.
So it's sad because, he's been a real nice piece for Edmonton in this playoff push. Just a high value, high character guy. But there's another thing, we look at the end result. The end result is an obvious injury. That's not where the Department of Player Safety starts their assessment. They start with the action, and then perhaps the end result comes into the equation when you look at the extent of the injury, if you've made the decision that the action warrants a suspension. So don't have an official word on it. But again, the sense last night was that it was unlikely that there was anything coming.
We were talking about it a little bit earlier, and Darren Dreger with us on the show. If you're watching on YouTube today, subscribe to the channel. We would appreciate that. He's brought to you by Pro-Am Sports. I said, I don't even know where I would look this up, but I feel like Zack Heyman might have had the first 2-goal, 1 assist, 3-point, +5, 10-hit game in NHL history last night. Like he's hitting everything that moves. And I mean, people have the opposition, the other blue lines so far in these playoffs must just hate him right now.
Oh.
And then you see it start to come together offensively as well. And my goodness, what a player they have right now in Zack Heyman.
Well, he's a machine, to be honest. He is. And okay, end of the game, towards the end of the game, those goals are just, it blew the game open. That's what it did. But that doesn't diminish how he scored those goals, right? The breakaway goal and the pass from Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, that's just high-end finish, right? I mean, those are terrific hands to put the puck where he did. And then the follow-up was a sweet play by Evander Kane. And Hyman is right there for a nifty deflection. So there's the offense. You mentioned the assist. But every time he's on the ice, if you're a defender for the Dallas Stars or you're a forward who's engaged in puck battle with Zack Heyman, you better have your big boy pants on, because you know what's coming. You know what's coming. And I remember back in the day, and not to drag up old stories because it doesn't matter, the Toronto Maple Leafs chose not to extend Zack Heyman. And it is still a thorn. It is still a thorn in this market.
How can it not be, right?
Yeah, how can it not be? When you watch what this guy does, game in and game out, and what he does when it matters most in the conference final, headed to the Stanley Cup championship final again. But it's a thorn in the side of Leaf fans because at the time, by and large, management looked at Zack Heyman and worried about whether or not he could play that game for an extended period. What was his career going to be short because of damage and because of injury and an inability to stay healthy. And, knock on wood, you don't want any player to have a shortened career because of bad knees, hips, whatever. It happens all the time. But in this case, Hyman just proves that, you know what? We all deal with physical adversities. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm just going to play the game that I was born to play. And he's one of those players, and Edmonton has a few of them. He just drags you into the fight, but in a good way. It's not silly stuff, after the whistle stuff and all that crap. That's not what he does. He does it by just, exerting presence and then beating you in every way he can, including on the score sheet. So just a terrific story right now.
Dregs, before we let you go, is there any way
No.
Carolina can find a way to win a conference final game?
Well, not the way the Florida Panthers are playing. I'm sorry, but, Carolina was just flat out outclassed in the last game. Flat out outclassed in game 3. And that has to be absolutely unnerving. You've got Rod Brindamore who's searching for answers and way to answer questions post-game. And to a point where he had no choice but to basically start pointing fingers at his top guys. He acknowledged that, Stahl and Martin can't be the veteran guys that play their hearts out every single shift, every night. You need full and complete commitment and buy-in, and we just don't have that. The only player, the veteran player that he actually did call out by virtue of a specific question was Dmitry Orlov and the mistakes that he made in game 3. So if you're a player in that room and you can see your coach is exasperated, all you can do literally is put it all on the line. So I expected Carolina. There's tons of heart and there's tons of push, but they were disemboweled in game 3. That's what it was. Yeah. That's what it was. So I don't think that Florida is going to allow them off the mat, because now you've got Reinhart hurt. The extra time that can be invested by sweeping this series matters if you're the Florida Panthers, and you're secretly cheering for the Dallas Stars to win a game so that Edmonton is dragged to the limit, whoever comes out of the West.
Any bit of rest, it would be an advantage, right?
Hey, speaking of which, before we break, how much rest do you think Rashog got? I know he's coming up here. I don't know if you guys knew this or not. He didn't make the game yesterday.
What?
Didn't make it. Yeah.
He was sick.
There was no. Apparently to get from Dallas to Denver is a 9-hour ordeal. Now, not his fault. I'm not going to throw him fully under the bus. He didn't sleep through an alarm. It's not like he was out like gallivanting in Dallas the night before. I don't know. Something happened. It was a storm. I don't know. He'll have to explain it.
We'll have to get to the bottom of this.
Anyway.
What a guy. What a guy. Unbelievable.
I don't know how far.
He's going to love that you brought that up, Drex.
It feels like you could probably drive from Denver to Edmonton. I don't know how long of a drive. That's
if you really want to commit to covering the series, yes.
Great point.
That's kind of what I'm saying here, guys. That's kind of what I'm saying. So wish him well for me, okay?
We will. And when's your next Ray and Dregs drop? When are you guys getting back in the booth here?
Yeah, we're recording an episode in about 25 minutes.
Okay.
In fact, Ray actually jumped on a flight. I guess yesterday. Quickly got on a flight back to Vancouver. So he's going to spend the day with his family and then dive right back in, I suppose. So, we'll drop an episode today.
No rest for the wicked, man, unless you're you just don't care if we'll get to that game. All right, Drex, let's talk to you later, man. There you go.
All right, guys.
That's
have a good one.
Darren Dreger, brought to you by Pro-Am Sports.